Today's guest is Kass Newell, a leader who knows the stock show industry from the inside out. A native of Oklahoma, Kass grew up showing cattle and goats across the country before turning that exhibitor experience into a career. Today, Kass and I cover everything from balancing a family with a successful career to leading one of the most efficient and hardworking teams in the livestock industry with confidence and humility. Now serving as the Executive Vice President of the Oklahoma Youth Expo and the Vice President of Operations for Cattlemen's Congress, she leads the logistics and day-to-day operations of those major stock shows with one goal in mind, making every exhibitor's experience the best it can be. Join me in welcoming one of Oklahoma's very own girl bosses, Mrs. Kass Newell. Kass, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to have you on to share some of your experiences and advice for other women in the stock show industry. So without further ado, would you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself, where you grew up, and how your involvement in the ag and stock show industry began?
I currently live in Yukon, Oklahoma, and have two daughters, Nyla and Nellie, and my husband is a veterinarian here in the state, Dalton Newell, and works on mostly cattle. But we moved to Yukon right before our oldest daughter was born. But originally, I grew up in Orlando, Oklahoma, which is just outside of Stillwater, and grew up on a cattle and goat operation up there. Grew up showing Angus cattle across the nation with my siblings. And when I was in 8th grade, started showing goats as well. So, the operation was primarily cattle until my sister decided one year after we had gotten some pygmy goats to help manage some ringworm on some heifers that she wanted to show some goats. So she started with a few goats, and progressively the operation has transitioned to primarily a show goat operation there at Pfeiffer Farms. And so both of my siblings work there at the farm full time alongside my dad and a few other employees as well. They're still involved in the day-to-day of that operation up there. And I kind of branched out and went to work for the Oklahoma Youth Expo just directly out of college. While I was in grad school, had the opportunity to come work here full time. And so I have been here ever since and am excited to continue to be involved in the agriculture industry and excited that my siblings are able to work at the farm full time as well.
That's awesome. I actually did not know that you had a background in the show goat world, so that's pretty neat to hear. So you mentioned you went to grad school. So did you do your undergrad and your graduate degree at Oklahoma State University?
Actually, when I first started out, I started at Redlands Community College and was on the livestock judging team there and involved in all the ag things on campus there at Redlands. And then I transferred to Oklahoma State and was also on the livestock judging team there. Graduated with an animal science and business degree from OSU. And then I went to grad school in meat science under Dr. Mayfie and did that for 2 years. I had just defended my thesis. I was in, my fall semester there of my last year, and the week after, my boss now, Tyler, called and asked if I wanted to come work at OIE. And I was very fortunate on the timing. And so I started basically the next week here at OIE. While I was at OIE, I did a second master's as well in international ag. So I actually ended up with 2 masters. So just like to branch out there.
Wow, yeah, you've got all the degrees in all the different areas. That's very impressive. You mentioned that you work for OIE, and then I obviously know you from Cattlemen's Congress. So can you tell us a little bit about what sets OIE and Cattlemen's Congress apart from other shows that people are familiar with in the United States?
Yeah, so when I started here, I was strictly working for OIE, and OIE is what we call the world's largest junior livestock show. So it's only open to junior exhibitors in the state of Oklahoma. And we have exhibitors from all 77 counties that compete here. We'll have over 8,000 exhibitors, and that show's always held in conjunction with spring break. Other kids that don't show livestock might be going on vacation, where OIE kids, livestock kids are all coming here to Oklahoma City to compete for the top honors here. State basketball is held the first weekend of OIE, and we always like to say that championship happens on the first weekend, and we're naming champions that are statewide champions at OIE throughout the week in both breeding and market. So at OIE, we have sheep, goats, hogs, and cattle, with hogs being over half of our numbers at OIE. And so it's a unique event because it is only open to junior exhibitors and only Oklahoma exhibitors. That's where we started in 2020 when COVID happened. There were so many changes. The National Western canceled that year. Gerald Callahan and Bob Funk reached out to us, and they were involved with us through OIE, and they knew what we could do there and wanted us to put on the Cattlemen's Congress. And so that first show was held in January of 2021. It was in the fall whenever we started it, so it was a really quick year that very first year, and we pulled off something pretty awesome that year. And we just finished our 6th year of Cattlemen's Congress. Such an elite cattle show with exhibitors not only from the United States, but we also get a lot of exhibitors from Canada as well. Something that I think they saw in our team that we could put on that show was how we organize the shows, how we move traffic in, bring in so many different interns from all over the US, which is awesome because we get to work with so many different interns through all these different events that we put on. And so I think what's unique to both Cattlemen's Congress and OIE is our staff puts everything into those events to make them as organized as possible. And we certainly couldn't do it without all of our awesome interns and volunteers that come to both of those events and help us out in numerous ways. But both are really awesome events, and I'm so blessed to be a part of both of those.
Yes, that is so awesome. I am super excited that you mentioned how important those staff members are, and I'm excited to get into that a little bit later in the episode. Super cool that I didn't know that over half of y'all's entries at OIE were pigs. So as a pig girl myself, that's really neat, and it's definitely on my bucket list to come and visit y'all one day. It also coincides with one of our big shows, Houston. So right around that same time, but I can definitely see the impact that it's making on the youth of Oklahoma. You mentioned that you started with just OIE, and then Cattlemen's Congress came about after you had started with OIE. So can you walk us through a little bit of your journey of how you became executive vice president of OIE, and then also at the same time the vice president of operations at Congress?
Yeah, so when I started at OIE, I was the director of Livestock. And so Jacob Sanderson is now in that role. But I did that role for a few years. When I started, I was hand typing in all the nominations. So typing those nominations in alone was taking me an entire month, basically. And so I started that role in November of 2015. And then in January, our financial person left. And so Tyler transitioned me into doing both of those roles at the same time. So I did that for a little while. And then it was kind of a lot because it was a lot of the same needs at the exact same time. So we had a few more staff changes down the road there. And that's when I officially got moved into executive vice president. We brought back in JD. He had interned for us, which almost all of our staff here have either interned or were in OALE. So we had worked with them previously. And so kind of was focused on OIE for a good bit of time there. And then whenever Congress came about, that first year, it was a lot because we were working basically with what our OIE staff was, because obviously we didn't know we were going to have this other show. And so since Congress has come along, we've been able to add a few more staff members and kind of branch out a little bit on that, which has been super great for us to be able to have more staff members at all the shows. But then at the same time, in 2020, Mr. Funk had built us an office here on the fairgrounds. And that office, we moved into it in May of 2020. And at the time when we built it, we only had OIE. And so we were super fortunate that we're able to add in more staff members. We added those staff members and outgrew our office pretty quickly, which was awesome. What we built, we never would have imagined that we would have had these other shows on board with us. And so it's just funny how it happens sometimes, how it works out. You never know what the future's going to hold. You never know what's going to happen. Obviously, none of us would have predicted COVID, but certainly would not have 10 years ago, we would have never even imagined Cattlemen's Congress being here. And so I think it's really great how it's turned out and how it's worked out and how we've been able to branch out and still manage both these shows that are pretty close together. We have Cattlemen's Congress in January and OIE's in March. So as soon as we're done with Congress, we're wrapping it up and moving right into the next one, which is good. Keeps us on our toes and we don't get bored here.
I bet not. But man, talk about being thrown into the fire and definitely learning how to adapt and grow through that and those different positions that you had to manage and all those responsibilities that kind of ran simultaneously. That's very inspiring. I'm curious, now that you have both of these roles and you've seen some other positions with OIE and Congress, what part of your job brings you the most fulfillment, or what's your favorite part of your job now?
I think my favorite part is really just being in the craziness of those events that are happening. I guess I thrive in like a multitasking, crazy environment that's full throttle. Congress and OIE in their layouts are a lot different. So, Congress, it's not quite as full throttle as OIE. OIE, all four species are there at once, and there's just so many people on the grounds, and you just really are, you don't have time to get tired because you're moving from one thing to the next. So I think just in general, my favorite part is just being able to be at those events and see our entire year's worth of work paying off, all the things coming to fruition, and all of our organization, our detailed plans, hoping that all those come off exactly as planned. And there's a lot of road bumps along the way, but when those things do go as smoothly as possible, it feels very rewarding. For me specifically, the event that everyone looks forward to every year is the Grand Drive at OYE. You know, we've been planning this one for 2026 here the last couple weeks, but there's some years that the pyro doesn't go off exactly as planned and different things don't go exactly as planned. But luckily, we're the only ones that really know that, and everyone that's in there is still just soaking in all the things. But when all those things hit just right, it's such an awesome experience for our staff to see it, I guess, get fully pulled off and as accurately and well timed as possible at that event.
Yeah, that is such a good point. I think from personal experience, just having been able to spend a week with you guys the past 2 years at Congress, y'all do such a phenomenal job of thinking through every little detail of the show to the biggest things that people notice. And I find it so inspiring that y'all are able to put out fires that arise, and most of the time people don't even realize that there was an issue. And so I think that's something that a lot of people can strive to do and sometimes fall short, but y'all's team does a phenomenal job of keeping everything in line and keeping the show running as smoothly as possible. Definitely admire y'all's work and everything that y'all do behind the scenes for a year leading up to each show. So with that in mind, knowing how busy some of your seasons can be, and also you had mentioned that you do have two beautiful daughters and your husband in Oklahoma with you. So I know that in my kind of generation or my age group of girls, we have this long list of goals that we want to reach. And for the majority of us, at the top of that list is having a career and then also having a family. Obviously, your priority can be on one or the other, but for most of us, I think that those kind of coincide. So, what is your advice to young women that want both a career and a family?
That was always a goal for me, was to have both. And I think when you get first out of college, you're obviously pretty career driven and you're trying to build that career up, but the time comes where you do want to have a family, and it's certainly not easy by any means. Your whole life changes when you have kids, but in the best way possible. We certainly would be lost without them. But for me, I think the thing that's the most helpful to help, me during events and all these things that are going on is really just our family support. Both of our families live here in Oklahoma, which is awesome, and are willing to step in and help out whenever we need it. So I think, without them, it wouldn't be nearly as easy. So we're certainly grateful for them to help whenever we need it. But for me, being a woman that works at these events, I like to see my kids every day. Fortunately, we live pretty close to the fairgrounds. And so during Hawaii, when the hours are really crazy, usually they bring the girls over and they get to hang out with us at the event. Nyla, my oldest, she knows a lot of these interns very well, and they've been around for the same amount of time that she's been around, and she basically considers them family at this point and doesn't know any different. So I think it's really awesome that I'm able to raise them alongside my job, and not for the week, but it is so rewarding at the end of the day, seeing them learn and develop and all of the things. And someday they'll be in the ring showing livestock, and all things will change again. But it's certainly obviously been the best journey of our lives, is to be able to have a family of our own.
Yeah, that's awesome. I just think they are the most adorable little things ever. Props to y'all for doing making that all work. And I certainly admire that you can be such a girl boss and also a great girl mom. I have loved watching that and watching them grow up. Can't wait to see all the things that they accomplish. And they definitely look up to you. And so super exciting. things happening for y'all. Going off of that girl boss comment that I made, which is so true, we know that agriculture historically and still today is a pretty largely male dominated field. So, what has it been like as a female building a career and leading teams in that environment?
For me, I think that at the end of the day, I don't know that it necessarily matters that whether you're a girl or a guy, but at the end of the day, it's what are the qualities that you're going to bring into a career. And growing up on a farm, our parents instilled an incredible work ethic in us. And growing up showing, we learned a lot of the skills that employers are looking for, responsibility, time management, multitasking. I grew up in a Class B school, so we had to do everything in that school. For me, I don't know necessarily obviously it is a male dominated career, but at the end of the day, I think just putting forth your best qualities that are important for a work environment are the most important thing at the end of the day, and has probably been my driving force in my job, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you make. I grew up with a brother that's super close in age to me, so we were always in competition, but it never was about that he was a boy and I was a girl. It was just that who's going to work harder, who's going to wake up earlier, and so that can be a big driving force in someone's success. And I couldn't agree more that you shouldn't let being a girl hinder you from chasing your goals and running with the big dogs, if you will.
Absolutely. Girls can outwork boys any day of the week if we want to.
Hi, it's Rachel Cottrell, founder of Ranch House Designs. When I started RHD over 25 years ago, it was with one simple goal: to help ranchers build better marketing so they can have higher sales and more profits, and ultimately, more success. And here's the thing, our team at Ranch House gets what it's like to be in the agriculture industry because we live it every single day. We know what it's like to juggle cattle, kids, and careers while still chasing big dreams. That's why our branding, websites, and marketing strategies are built to work in the real world for people just like you. If you're ready to grow your brand, request a free consultation today at ranchhousedesigns.com.
So again, knowing that you do hold these positions where you are leading pretty big teams, I have seen it myself, but for our listeners that maybe have not met you or been able to work with you, how do you balance confidence and humility as a leader?
I think in general, I'm probably a pretty confident person, but also want to have humility at the same time. In order to lead large teams like that, you have to have both, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's telling folks what jobs they're going to do for the day, how it's going to go that day. So I think it's a tough question, and I don't think there's an exact answer at it. But I would say that maybe the balance isn't necessarily about pleasing everyone, staying true to who you are and how you're going to lead people, and kind of just tailoring it to how you think the balance is going to work out best. That's a tough question, I think, but I think that in order to do both, you have to just have a balance of them.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's kind of like the whole work-life balance that people talk about. I personally don't think that's real. You just kind of have to make it all work. So I'm sure that kind of applies to this scenario as well.
Yes, absolutely. I do think so. And I think the longer that I've been in my role, I feel like the balance almost happens more every year. You figure things out and learn new things, and it helps with all of those things, I think. So just getting more seasoned in your position, I guess.
Yes, get into that groove, right?
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. So on that same note of that team culture, I know I had mentioned it earlier, but I have been fortunate to intern with you guys. And coming from Texas, I didn't grow up going to OIE. I actually never got to show at Congress, but I have experienced some of the Texas majors and some of the other national shows. And holy cow, the caliber of individuals that you guys have running y'all's shows is just top notch. I know that a lot of shows work really hard and require a lot of help, and so when you get to have super big teams, it can be difficult to make sure that everybody's on the same page, but y'all do such a good job of communicating responsibilities and cultivating this culture among the teams that helps the show run so smoothly. With that, What does a healthy team environment look like to you?
Our team here that we are fortunate to work with every day is great. As you said, we work well together. We all jump in and will do any role that's needed to get the job done. And I think really in general, as a healthy team environment, I think that's really it. Every one of our team members is willing to do whatever job it may be. We've all started from the bottom and have worked through all the challenges to get to where we are today. And every year presents new challenges and new things. And it doesn't matter what the job is. JD is the lead on our communications department, but he was out at Congress pulling poly cards. Same with Emily. Bray and I, we feed off each other and help each other in different ways. And then Jacob's really been thriving through our livestock department there. And we just recently developed a new show program as well. And he has been thriving through that. And so I think we all have our own individual role, but we mesh together really well and overlap with each other. And we're always willing to help each other out. We spend more time with our work employees than we do with our own families. And so we're basically like a little family of our own here at our office. And that can even lead over just like a family, where some days you're just like, all right, we need some space. But especially if you've spent, a few weeks together at a show. But we are just a really good team here. All of us here at this office, none of us actually interviewed for a job. All of us were offered a position. And I think having that background for our staff, whether they interned for us or they were in the OALE program, we knew them all before they were in their positions, which I think has been super helpful for us. And I think that's one of the major benefits of us getting to work with so many college students, is we get to know so many college students from across the US. And it's helpful for us because we get to look at who do we want to join on our team if a position is open, but also we can tailor their positions. They're looking for a position, or we know of a position that's open. We can be like, oh, so-and-so, they intern for us and they're awesome. Let's put them in that position. And so I think as a whole, our team here is awesome to work with, and we really get along well and do a great job of putting on events, whatever that event may be.
Yeah, that is such a good point that you make about how important that internship program is, and OALE program as well, and just the fact that internships are probably more important than interviews, because they're more of a week-long, month-long interview where they actually get to work with you and try things out. So could not agree more that those experiences and networking opportunities are so important for college students.
One note on that, Jimmy Harrell is on our board, and I think it was the year I got my job at OYE, he said, you interview for a job every day that you go out, like in life. We watched you and we knew we wanted you for the job. He's like, so it doesn't really matter where you're going, whether it be going to class for college or whatever. Someone may be watching you and potentially going to hire you for a job one day. So, the year he told me that, it's always been in the back of my mind that literally every day, whether it be you're going to an internship where you think you're just moving polycarts or moving trailers in, you're potentially interviewing for a job that you may have someday, which I think is super important to keep in mind.
100%. Could not agree more. And to even tie into what you'd mentioned earlier, those interviewing for every day with people that you're working with, or people that, were watching you from afar, you could be interviewing for a job that doesn't even exist today, kind of like you had mentioned when you started at OIE and Congress wasn't even a thought yet, but now look at you and the things that you've been able to accomplish because of the impact that you had on the people around you and that you've worked with. So that is such a good point that you make there. Internships, and on that same page, you guys have a phenomenal internship program at both Congress and OIE. So what is it that you're looking for in college students and in those applications that you'll receive for each of those? What kind of qualities, what makes a candidate stand out, and let you know ahead of time that they would make a good addition to the internship program?
Yeah, so I think internship applications as a whole are challenging. We get a lot of internship applications. I mean, for Congress, I think we had 250, and they're, like I said, from all over the United States. I think the most important thing that college students should think about when they're applying for those is that resume is perfected, because it's going to be the thing that we look at first. And I think a lot of colleges offer some type of program where you can get help with your resume. And I would definitely encourage college students to go and get all the help they can on that resume, because whether it's applying for an internship or for a job, that's going to be the first thing that they look at is your resume. How is it formatted? What does it look like? What's on it? Is the content good? All of those things. And with that being said, it's also very challenging to strictly judge an intern off of a resume. With Congress, we do the 30-second videos as well, which are very helpful. And our team goes through and looks at every one of them. But for me, at the end of the day, we love it when we can have returning interns, because a lot of those returning interns are very good at taking on initiative themselves and getting the job done. They're always on time. They're never late. They go do jobs without you having to necessarily tell them to do jobs, and just take on tasks on their own. And we certainly can appreciate that. Working with so many different interns, you get to know them all. Everyone has such a different personality, different mindsets, different backgrounds and things. But at the end of the day, we certainly can appreciate the work ethic of the interns and just the general qualities that, make them so good. They make our lives so much easier at the end of the day, basically. It's a tough question, but certainly at the end of the day, would definitely recommend, especially if it's someone that we maybe haven't worked with in the past, but perfecting that resume so that we can get them in there and get them to work with us so we can get to know them and hopefully bring them back multiple times.
Yes, those resources on campus are so important. I remember the first time I took my resume to the Career Center and they gave it back to me, and there was probably more red ink than there was the original black ink from what I had typed out. But it was so helpful and completely transformed the look and the content of my resume and made me a lot more confident when I was going to apply for different things. Could not agree more that we need to utilize those resources that not only are offered to us, but that we're paying for through tuition. I also love that you mentioned how important hard work is, and most of the time we can assume that livestock kids have that, but at the same time, it's not always a guarantee. So seeing that in not only my peers, but some of the generation younger than me, and seeing them develop their work ethic is super fun to watch, and having that initiative and being able to observe that something needs to be done and not having to be told can definitely be a big help to big teams like that. But you had mentioned that a lot of the interns and staff that you'll have at both shows come from different backgrounds, come from all across the nation. Is there any type of formal, maybe training or any type of group events that y'all do to help foster and build the culture that you have on your teams?
We don't necessarily do anything just as a whole, but with each show, we try to, at the beginning of the internship, bring them in and go over the ropes with them. And I think, like with Cattlemen's Congress this past year, our phase 1 of interns, a lot of those were returning interns, so most of them knew a lot of the things. Our phase 2 were typically, most of those were new. And so it's so important for us to be able to, it might be their first time on the Oklahoma City Fairgrounds, but to show them all of the things where I'm sure the first day when we do that meeting is very overwhelming for anyone that's new, because there's so much to take in, and you're like, well, you're going to send you to the parking lot to move some trailers in. You might not have a clue where you're going, trying to give them an overview of where's everything located, where's the office, all the things, but also at the same time letting them know if they have trouble throughout the week to be sure and reach out to us. And it takes, especially when they're new, a couple days to get to know them all and to know what their different strengths are, because a lot of them do have different strengths in different areas, and that kind of helps to assign them to different roles. The folks that are attention to detail focused are going to probably be in the show ring doing results and things like that, because they're good at paying attention and knowing, not missing anything, because that's such a crucial role that is played. But as a whole, like you saying, that would be really neat for us to do, like a general, like if you're interested in interning for us, like almost like a training program or something, that would be really neat. You saying that kind of just put that in my brain there.
Yeah, I recommend y'all's internship program enough. Of course, I did it a second year, and it just kept getting better and better. But y'all do such a good job of not only having high expectations for your interns, but you prepare us very well. I think that first day, like you mentioned, but you also throw us into the fire and let us really take initiative to grow and take ownership of the different roles that we're assigned each day. And while at the same time having an open line of communication if we do need help or if we do have questions. I never felt that I couldn't ask you guys a question. And so for all of our listeners out there, if you're in college and you have any interest in interning at OIE or Congress, I highly recommend you apply. Not only we get to work with great staff and see awesome livestock, but holy cow, just the experience in and of itself. You learn so much about working with the team and the background and logistics of an event of that magnitude.
I always love seeing when they are a lot of new interns, like in phase 2, where they start out the beginning of the week and don't know any of the other interns. And we have so many interns with Congress. By the end of the week, they're all like best friends. They might all be from across the nation, but they stay connected after the internship. And a lot of them, when they return the following year to intern again, they catch right back up where they left off the previous year, which I think is super cool because they're building really great relationships with other college students from across the nation.
Exactly. Not only are you networking with the staff and other people that are attending the show, but the networking opportunity amongst the intern cohort is also so impactful. And I can definitely attest to having met some really great friends through Yale's internship program. I met Texas A&M, and so I was actually convinced to go and tour Oklahoma State University for grad school and visit Stillwater for the first time by some of the interns that I had met at Congress last year. And they were super kind and hosted me, showed me around the town, and I thoroughly enjoyed it, and we stay in touch. So definitely an important aspect of that internship and a huge benefit.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
Yeah, so to wrap us up, Kass, I have a couple of quick fire questions for you. First, you mentioned that you grew up kind of showing cattle and goats, but what is your favorite species?
We did this fun thing back at the beginning of school where our staff members filled out little boards that said things like this. And on mine, it specifically said, not pigs. So anyone that knows me knows that they're not my favorite, but we really appreciate them at OIE. They're just not my favorite.
Well, hopefully your girls don't grow up and want to show a pig, because y'all might.
Nyla's already been asking about a pig, so who knows?
That's funny. What is one thing you can't function without during each show?
This has changed a lot over my time here, but currently in where I'm at in life would be without my family. Having my kids there to see me every day, I think is super helpful and reminds me why I'm working every day more than anything.
Oh, I love that answer. That's awesome. You've seen the stock show industry evolve over the years. What trends stand out to you right now?
Oh man, the biggest one that stands out for me right now is the hair on the show pigs, because that's just like from like left field and is something that's certainly on trend right now, something that we haven't experienced in our time until here in the last couple of years. So
Yes, that has been a big change. I feel like even since I graduated high school 3 years ago, it has just completely blown up, and people are using roto brushes and blowers on pigs, and that is just crazy to me. But I'm glad that we can all be in the same boat.
who would have thought they would have been fitting show pigs in 2026? But here we are.
Exactly. And then last fun question, what song do you currently have on repeat?
Oh man, I should say Thunderstruck because that's our song for the OIE Grand Drive. But Wonderwall has been on my repeat here the last few days. I don't know why, but also a lot of the Disney classics because of my kids, you know. So
Yeah, that's the good mom coming out in you. I love those answers. Great. To wrap us up, where can our listeners follow you or learn more about OIE and Cattlemen's Congress?
yeah, so I've got Facebook and Instagram. I don't do any of the other TikToks or any of that, but to learn more about OIE and Cattlemen's Congress, would specifically follow us on all of our social media accounts. And then also for the most real information would be on our websites. Certainly don't just Google us whenever you need an answer about the schedule or rule book or anything like that. Go to the website directly, because with AI around, it tends to create answers that might not always be true. So always go directly to the source would be my answer there.
Amen to that. Y'all do have an awesome communications team, and all of their social media is so fun to follow and keep up with. So highly recommend all of you guys go and follow them on social media and get a little familiar with their websites, because they're laid out very well. Kass, thank you so much for joining us today. For all of our listeners out there, Kass's journey is a powerful reminder that the best leaders are built through hard work, humility, and a commitment to excellence. Her story proves that when you lead with purpose and raise the standard, the impact reaches far beyond the show ring. With that, be sure to follow our page and join our group on Facebook where you can get updates about the podcast, ask questions, and even share motivation with other young girls and women in the stock show industry. Until next time, sisters, this is your host, Riki Nardiello, and I hope you have a fabulous week.